Have you ever found yourself in a situation with a woman where you think she is the embodiment of everything you could ever want in a girlfriend or a wife? Say you share a class or an office with her. You stare and you can't help but daydream of how perfect life would be with her. She's the most beautiful woman to you. No other would even compare to her. But it's not just physical. She's that idealistic mix of looks and intelligence. She challenges you on a different level, more than anyone you've encountered before. This woman sounds amazing, so I can understand why you think she's the only one for you. But the rule of 7 begs me to ask, how qualified is your opinion on this matter? Maybe you think it's not about options or experience with other women. This is about trying to secure your only chance to find love with that perfect person. So when your friends tell you that there are millions of other fish in the sea, you pay them no mind. What your friends are really trying to say is that you're swimming upstream against the flow of a rushing river made up of hundreds of thousands of years of evolution and millions of years of our prehistoric non-primate ancestors. Let me clarify what I'm trying to convey. A theory of how we find ourselves in whatever social standing we are in now is partly because of our genetic makeup being determined by an evolutionary path. What was that path? It was generations of our ancestors jostling for social status and control of the tribe. Much like pack animals, our ancestors had a social hierarchy where the strongest and fittest claimed the position loftiest, the position we called an alpha. He would have the first pick of everything, from the best parts of a kill after a hunt, or the most coveted mate amongst the women of the tribe. The rest of the men would be subservient to him and take his leftovers and would be termed as betas by us modern men. This idea isn't exactly a groundbreaking revelation for most of you, but it's important to note how choice is symptomatic of being an alpha. So if we betas can exhibit the notion that we have choice and options, then we are halfway to where we want to be. Choice is in itself attractive, and when you can't display choice to a woman, they can tell, and they can tell you're a beta. What is the opposite of choice? Obsession and having a one-nightus. You deny yourself of choice by convincing yourself that there is only one woman for you. That notion is so real to people, and it may be for you right at this very moment. We've been sold for our entire recorded history of the glamorized version of romance where you pine and chase your love of your life for months or years, be it in plays from hundreds of years ago to modern day media like movies and television shows. The idea that if you focus your energy and devotion on a woman, that eventually her resistance breaks down and she gives into your relentless pursuit. Be it in plays from hundreds of years ago to modern day media like movies and television shows. The idea that if you focus your energy and devotion on a woman, that eventually her resistance breaks down and she gives into your relentless pursuit, and you then live happily ever after. Obviously, this just isn't true, and frankly, it's rather disturbing. You may at the time feel what you're doing is, in the very least, should be considered nice and wholesome. The reality, though, is your obsession with your romantic interest isn't anything but self-destructive to you and enabling for her. Well, how is it unhealthy for you to have a one-nightus? Firstly and foremost, you're denying yourself of truly finding someone who appreciates you and wants you and loves you. Second, you're likely not happy inside about this whole thing as you're wasting your time and money and your youth on something that will likely never come to be. Third, the respect you have for yourself and the respect your friends have for you will dwindle away. Just imagine how you neglect your needs and the needs of the people who actually like you in favor of some rather uncaring person. Fourth, you're actually not improving and bettering yourself. You replace your self-improvement with giving yourself away in hopes that you can indebten someone enough that they'll accept you into their life. I used the word obsession before to describe a person's infatuation for their one-nightus. Another word that fits that is a bit more enlightening is the word addiction. You're addicted to her. When you're apart, you feel lousy, and when together, you're happy as if you're riding a high. Just like any other addiction, it will break you, and it might take hitting rock bottom for you to change your idea of a successful, fulfilling relationship. But I really hope not. If you are experiencing this, just know that I and so many other guys have been in your shoes. I remember coming across a gorgeous girl in high school and me not having a lot of experience with relationships. I had no basis of how to behave in one or to make one. I remember my behaviors and what I endured just to stay near her. I would do the cliche thing of carrying her books or backpack while walking her to class, while she would occasionally stop and chat up a handful of different guys while I wait in the background. There was this time when one of these guys asked her if I was her boyfriend, and she laughed and said, "Of course not, he's just my friend." I was crushed, but not surprised. And I stood there with a stupid smile like everything's alright. That's not all though. She kept me around for good reason. Her parents were really strict and they wouldn't let her go out with just any guy. My parents and her parents actually knew each other because they went to the same church. This girl would invite me over to her house and tell her mom we were going out, and since her mom knew me and my parents, she was always cool with it. We weren't going out just to be together alone. Nope. I was just a way to get her out of the house so she could hang out with her friends. Sometimes I would even chauffeur her to her friend's house. If so, she'd tell me I could go home and she'll find her own way back. Yay. It's so fun. And as much as it sounds ridiculous, I didn't think I was being used as I told myself I was getting something out of it. Just being able to talk to her and socialize with her. This went on for the majority of my senior year in high school. It ended when one of her guy friends told me she wanted nothing to do with me anymore and that she appreciated how much I cared about her, but they would be going out from now on. It wasn't an awesome final year of high school. You'd think that would be the catalyst I would need to reshape my romantic life, but as you know, that wasn't the case. Like I mentioned in previous podcasts, that change didn't happen until my mid-20s. So for some 7 or 8 more years, I maintained that same outlook on relationships. There are so many seemingly backwards but successful behaviors in attracting and keeping a girlfriend that most never take the plunge and give it a shot. It just seems too risky for the risk adverse, too risky for the inexperienced. Some of the examples of these behaviors would be, number 1, not replying to a text immediately. To most, we would be scared not to reply back as soon as possible because what if she thinks we are ignoring her, or we want her to know how important she is, so we drop everything we're doing to get back to her. Or we want to jump on that text in hopes that she was up for a conversation finally. We wouldn't want to miss out on the chance she's in the mood to talk. Number 2 is creating distance to build attraction. We see it in movies where a guy is considered to be an ass, but is found attractive. Or maybe we see how girls see an emotionally unavailable man as attractive. In the mind of the uninitiated, it sounds rational to keep yourself around your romantic interest for as long and as frequently as possible. The thinking may be rooted in showing how reliable and dependable you could be in a relationship, or you just think that if they get to know you enough, they'd fall for you. Yeah, that's not really a thing though. Number 3, asking things of her instead of doing things for her. It makes sense to most that our actions and our sacrifices, perhaps, could indebten someone to like us or to feel obligated to favor us in some way. Unfortunately, it isn't effective to manipulate someone into loving you, or at least it won't work for a long-term relationship. Asking someone to do something for you shows how much you trust that person to come through for you. It speaks volumes and gives you an opening to return the favor. Reciprocity. So it doesn't feel like you're just doing things for her or prostrating yourself for her. You're just showing your appreciation for what she did for you. Number 4, saying no. Let's be serious. At one point in our life, we were just that yes man when it came to a girl. We would do anything and everything, especially for our one-nighters. Saying no to a request wouldn't even cross our mind for even the small fraction of a second. Saying no to a request wouldn't even cross our mind for even the small fraction of a second. We can't and won't disappoint her. As you can guess, saying no is attractive. It shows how you prioritize your needs and wants, as well as, likely, you have other romantic options. Pointing out these behaviors is to help you understand when you've truly accepted abundance in your life. When you live these behaviors, when they are part of your everyday life, then you'll know you made it and you freed yourself from obsession and your one-nights. So how does the Rule of 7 help cure your penchant for obsessing over a woman? It's all about desensitizing yourself from that feeling when you're with her. That high you get from orbiting her is a source of your addiction. When you can experience those feelings, that euphoria, that adrenaline, whenever you want by entertaining the attention of other women, then the haze that clouds your rationality will lift and you can start forming healthier relationships. You might say that your one-nightess is actually an incredible person and that she is worthy of your attention and sacrifice. You know what? It's very possible, and I would 100% believe you. The great thing about the Rule of 7 is that I wanted it to be adopted in the easiest way possible for whomever is interested in using it to change their lives. As long as you talk to 7 different women every day, you're good to go. So this might surprise you, but I don't care if one of those 7 is your one-nightess. The Rule of 7 isn't just a cure for the ailment of obsession. It's also the treatment for improving every relationship you have. Am I saying I can get your one-nightess to fall in love with you? No, I can't say that. But I can say it will be the best shot of you getting her. It's almost the same premise as getting an ex back, but because you're having to reshape the idea of who you are to another person, it's going to take time and work. If you've seen the movie Inception, you can kind of sort of understand how rooted ideas are in one's mind. We can't change that idea by tapping into someone's brain to manipulate it like in the movie. So what are some ways that we can start reshaping the idea of who we are? The most effective way is the most obvious and the most difficult. Time and distance. Very obvious, right? Let's talk about the ways you might have not known or ways that are reasonably manageable for a person with limited social experience. This should go without saying, but you must be adopting the Rule of 7 into your everyday routine. The act of speaking to women will give you the clarity to make any of what I say work for you. One way is to simply have a firm position on subjects of any type. It wouldn't be surprising to me if you are really flexible on topics that your one-nightess might be talking about. Let's say you like rock music and your one-nightess likes jazz and thinks it's not only better than rock music, but it's the best type of music. Don't be nasty or defensive about it, and don't be a pushover, but simply voice your opinion just like she did. Regardless of her reaction, don't ever start an argument with her about this or anything else. The goal is establishing the fact that you have likes, dislikes, and opinions. In turn, this shows respect you have for yourself, and it shapes an idea of who you actually are as a person. Your one-nightess might truthfully know very little of what you are if you have been a yes man for your entire relationship. Another way to reshape how people perceive you is being honest with how you see them. This is a healthy exercise not just for you, but for them as well. The goal is not to break them down as a person, but show them you choose to hang around them even with knowing who they are. Who they exactly are. The good and the bad. Remember, you're not being honest to neg them or to be an ass. How do you be honest with how you see them, though? Has she ever asked you for advice or a shoulder to cry on? As long as she's prompting you, this is the time to have a subtle change in how you handle this relationship. I really hope you can't relate to this, but I've been in a position where my one-nightess has asked me for advice about another guy. She said, "What can I do to make him like me?" If you know this girl well enough and haven't just been physically infatuated with her, it's a great time to be a real-life human being. Maybe you can tell her, it might help if you liked him for who he is instead of the idea of having him. And this can be in lieu of some beta-like answer such as, "He's a fool not to like you. You're so beautiful." So there are some ideas to start molding yourself into a more attractive version. They are starting points that you build from by understanding the self-respect you were missing. And now that you're reclaiming as you gain confidence with interacting with many other women. These subtle changes will eventually escalate into more in-your-face changes. The biggest motivator to raise the stakes with your one-nightess will be because you'll recognize your time is important to you, and you won't be able to invest so much energy and attention to this just one girl. I know that doesn't sound like a realistic scenario right now, but you'll get to that point with her and the understanding that some months-long courtship is an incredible opportunity cost. You'll begin to weigh the time you spend chasing flighty women with the possibility of losing out on women who are waiting in the wings and who are actually interested in you. Well, anyways, what would these more drastic changes look like? For myself, I would begin stating my wants and intentions. Being emotionally vulnerable to a woman is no longer an issue for me. I don't care if she rejects me just because there are so many other options to pursue. Knowing that, I have very little hesitation to tell a woman that the whole reason I'm even around her is because I'm romantically interested in her. This sets up rejection scenarios, and this is what I mean the stakes are being raised. These drastic steps need to be worked up from the subtle changes, because if you come out of nowhere and drop these bombs on a woman who has seen you as a beta orbiter type of guy since you first met, well, they won't likely work. Another change you might see as drastic and impossible is changing how you deal with touch, proximity, and leading. A good way to see this is as role-playing. So what I do a lot with a woman of any stage of familiarity is just act like I'm their boyfriend. This really helps with cutting to the chase and finding out how a woman really feels about you. There is some innate attraction even with a relative stranger just because of their own assumptions and unconscious biases. A person can just briefly talk to you, and just by how you look, how you hold yourself, how you speak, how you smell, and how your voice sounds, that they can be attracted, and instead of trying to work a whole attraction routine on her, just assume it. You can do this with your one-nightists or whomever. What does this look like then? Well, if you've been talking to your 7 women every day for some time, you've likely been on multiple dates by now. You'll understand that touch and a woman accepting your touch are pivotal moments in attraction. So you touch her. Specific examples would be taking her hand to lead her to places, like ushering her to class, or just hold her hand as you two walk side by side. If you're eating together at a restaurant, that's another good opportunity. Typically, when you eat platonically with someone, or if you're on a first date, you'll sit across from the woman. Instead, sit next to her if it's a booth or a bench. I've done this and actually put my arm around her while we ate. Trust me, if she really doesn't like you, this interaction will end very quickly. She might be startled by the quick change in demeanor and ask you, "What are you doing?" Just be honest. Say what I say because it's likely true for all of us. Say what I've always wanted to do. Respect her if she asks you to stop, though, and this will likely be a firm cue for an exit to this relationship or whatever it's technically called. I hope you can understand this idea of touch is something you need to calibrate in terms of appreciating people's personal space and possible triggers. And do your homework when getting to know a woman to fully understand what might be off limits with someone. If you're doing what I do and asking the tough questions, you might find out she's been abused in the past or suffered a similar traumatic incident. Don't do this with women that obviously would be triggered negatively by this. The last example for a drastic shift in behavior will be the subjects of conversation that the two of you will talk about. I'm very sure you have off-limit topics with your one-nightists. When you feel it's time, you're going to have to throw that idea out. What should you talk about then? I think the best topics would be about relationships and sex. Since you're talking to other women and dating other women, talk about it. Perhaps you're holding back from telling her that you're seeing many other women because you think it would piss her off or ruin the chances with her. I mean, those are very likely outcomes, but drastic is drastic. How would we broach these conversations then? How about asking her for advice for your next date or the next text you're needing to send to a woman you recently met? She might be ecstatic and be incredibly willing to be your wing woman, quote unquote. That's not a great sign that she's interested in escalating your relationship, by the way. If she's gung-ho to help, she might see this as a situation as a way to get you away from her by passing you off to another woman. Another conversation topic I'm not too shy to discuss is sex, and this could be in the form of talking about what she likes during sex, when it was her first time to have sex, how many people she has sex with. Being comfortable with this topic has secured a lot of dates, or having even a girl spend the night with me. If you have very little to no experience, you can frame this topic by asking her for advice about sex. This is all about getting out of that friend zone-like relationship with her. And eventually, you do want her to at least consciously or subconsciously think about sex and you at the same time. You have to be pretty careful without coming across creepy when getting into these types of conversations. You can counteract that potentiality by coming across as an inquisitive or just an eager to improve your sexual ability, or from a very confident frame of inquiry. That confidence comes with, of course, a lot of experience in having sex with women. But one angle to take is, if you have that experience, is one of disappointment in your previous sexual relationships. I might say, I've never been with a woman who is good at sex. Or, pretty much every woman I've been with just lies there. I found that women can be quite competitive in this respect and want to prove that they are good at sex or what have you. So just as a side note, I'm being quite truthful here and I'm not really trying to manipulate. I really haven't been with many women that are decent at it. Moving on though. I'd like to reiterate my position on one-nightedness. A quick Google search about the term will bring up links to websites that talk about getting over your one-nightedness and moving on and such. Just like I spoke of exes, I am not asking you to move on from your one-nightedness. In actuality, having a one-nightedness gives you an easy woman to talk to since you need 7 of them a day, right? I'm really all about adopting a lifestyle that is easy to transition to. I'm not asking you to go cold turkey and drop people from your life. What I'm asking you to do is to speak to at least 7 women a day. And I really don't care who the 7 are. It's simple and easy to say, but there's no surprises. Just talk to 7 women. You'll find that when you really take this idea to heart, you'll start living a life of a man who has an abundance of choice. I typically end podcasts with reviewing relationship advice from Reddit. I came across some interesting posts that I would like to share my thoughts on. And the first one would be called this. It's titled, "Looking for a Partner is Exhausting." The Redditor goes on to say, "I've only been single for 2 months. I just got out of a long-term 4+ year relationship. So it's been a while. I'm a 24-year-old guy and I'm already exhausted by the prospect of finding someone. And to be honest, I'm not even ready to start looking properly yet. I downloaded Tinder and Bumble about a week ago and I've had no luck on the whole. I've been matched with some people and spoke to a couple, but they really weren't doing anything for me. I feel weird on the apps. Like I just want to get my swiping done and get off it ASAP. For someone who's been out of this sort of thing for so long and because I'm quite introverted, does anyone have tips going forward on how to still get out there but not exhaust your head? I feel like I would lose interest the longer this went on, but I do want a partner to build with. I'm a genuine guy, not interested in hookups and shallow relationships. Never have been. For those who know about personality typologies, I've recently found out that I am an INFJ, which is the rarest personality in Western culture. This can make it difficult for me to meet new people, even though I think I have an awful lot to offer." So yeah, the main point of the post was that they feel the process of dating wears on them emotionally and physically, and that they just want it over with whenever they try to swipe or what have you. Obviously, being single for 2 months isn't enough time for a normal person to process a breakup of a relationship of such a length, 4 years. It would be prudent for anyone who has exited a relationship to understand their responsibility in its failure. Though I do think it is quite important to begin speaking to women right away whenever you're officially single. You need to work on yourself, though. Yes, that means the obvious advice of exercising and turning to your hobbies and friends, but that's not what I'm referring to. To get over a breakup is to really look at the decisions you made over the course of the relationship and how they affected this outcome. Your complacency and other negative attributes should be realized and corrected. But what do he and what do we do about the exhaustive effort it takes to find women, to talk to them, and to date them? Well, though it might be tiring to do so, I never really perceive it as a negative. The act of playing football, for instance, is incredibly exhaustive. Playing competitive chess must be mentally exhausting. But you can find people doing such activities for hours and having fun doing them. So what is the difference here? Why is dating not exhilarating and exhausting, just like playing your favorite game could be? The reason is you don't see how fun it can be. You see it as a torturous test of your attractiveness, perhaps. If you don't think yourself attractive, then this process won't be fun. Maybe conversation is really difficult for you and the anxiety from performing in front of these women doesn't seem fun in the slightest. Then you obviously don't see yourself as a great conversationalist and that you must be a perfect conversationalist to, have a really good time on a date. Likely that's not true in both regards. You need to find the fun in dating. And the fun I see is improving myself in social situations that I would ultimately benefit from in all other facets of my life, from business to family to dating. You can call yourself introverted all you want and proclaim your INFJ-ness. I get it. I was there. I was the most closed-off, nerdy, geeky guy you could imagine. I was almost comically, stereotypically introverted. But from this guy, the Redditor, who has been in a long-term relationship since he was 20 years old, man, for some of us, we would have killed to know what it would have been like to be in a relationship, to experience a person loving us and wanting us for a large portion of our adult life. This Redditor is telling us that he can't understand the reward of being in a relationship and how much better it is than to not be in one. I'm having a hard time reconciling the idea that the effort it takes to find another woman to love and be loved by isn't worth it if he vividly understands that feeling. Let's go into the next post. The next post I wanted to share is called Jess Asks If They're Still Interested. The post goes on to say, piece of advice. I see a lot of people on here asking how to know if someone is still interested or how to find out, etc. Just ask. I understand that if that's intimidating, but here's why you should just go for it. Number 1. Truly the rest of the list doesn't matter after this. Communication is key. Regardless of if it's been 1 date or 6 months, there's nothing wrong with wanting to be clear about where you stand with someone and seeing if you're on the same page. Anyone who has a problem with open communication about this isn't worth your time. Number 2. It's useless to try to figure it out on your own. It's a two-person situation. No matter how many friends you ask or posts you make on Reddit, you still won't know for sure if the person is still interested unless you hear it from them. Number 3. It's not worth the time or stress you'll spend worrying over it. Number 4. It avoids miscommunications, misunderstandings, and hurt feelings. Number 5. It starts a good foundation for positive communication in the future. By starting a difficult conversation, you're opening the door for other individuals to come to you with things like this as well. Oh gosh, I think this is absolutely terrible advice. Let's go through this numbered list the Redditor provided. Number 1. Communication is key, but communication isn't just forcing conversation or just talking. Open communication is something that we should strive for, but open communication doesn't mean openly sharing everything you're thinking, worrying about, or whatever. It's just not. I've come across so many women that confuse the concept of communication with oversharing. Every inquisitive thing that comes across their mind is just spout out over and over hundreds of text messages or calls. If you have a value that openly sharing is communication, then at what limit does your value no longer apply? Are you going to share whenever you went to use the bathroom with everyone you know? It's just not a real principle. It's just not. Number 2, the Redditor says it's useless to figure out social situations on your own, and friends and other Redditors won't know if the person you like is actually interested in you. Let's turn this around on the Redditor, and he or she being so curious if a person is interested in this is self-admittance that they have no idea how to read another person. They are so socially inept that they couldn't understand cues that would be obvious to people who are much more experienced. Number 3, it's not worth your time to stress over someone's attraction to you. That's 100% true, but not in the sense that this person is implying. The implication being we should ask questions to a potential partner like they are a teacher in elementary school and we can't figure out how to find the value of X in algebra. This person is seeking a shortcut that can be mastered with experience. Number 4, not asking avoids communication apparently. I mean, technically, yeah, sure, but do you really think just asking people means they won't lie to you? You're putting them in a really tough position, especially if that person is a woman. Rejecting a man isn't as easy as it sounds. There are so many accessory things that they have to calculate in sharing the truth with a man. I know some men who don't take rejection well, and it makes them scary and unpredictable. Number 5. I want to say again, oversharing will never be a foundation for communication in a relationship. All it says to a partner is that you have no coping mechanism to handle stresses in your life or your anxiety. It's incredibly unattractive having to handle someone else's issues that can be fixed by that other person working on themselves. The more and more you put yourself out there, the more and more you'll understand this type of personality. I've seen it manifest, like I mentioned earlier, with women sending endless strings of text messages asking why I'm not replying and does it mean I'm not interested? It's almost a guarantee that person turns really aggressive and tries to get a rise out of me just so they can be validated with a reply. At the end of the day, it's our responsibility to master our emotions and read the social cues people present to us. Normalizing yourself with the Rule 7 will go far in these situations because it's all about not getting caught up with the idea that one person is destined to be ours. The expectations you put on others will always end up causing disappointment and resentment for both people. You have to find your abundance by just making it. Thank you all again for taking time to listen, and I'll be back soon with another podcast.